Welcome back to another rapid game in our series. So today we'll start with the move 1 to e4 again. And we have a Pirc. So after the move pawn to d6, we'll go pawn to d4. Now most often our opponent will play the move knight to f6 here, so initiating the Pirc, but this also can go into like a Philidors if he plays the move pawn to e5, and pawn to e5 is a very good move order if you play the Philidors as black actually, because it cuts down a lot of options for white. Now after the move pawn to g6, there are a couple of different ideas for white here. Like we can go for a couple of different setups. The easiest setup is probably just a 180 attack where you go bishop to e3, queen to d2. Some more aggressive setups involve playing the move pawn to f4. So let's look at the move pawn to f4, because I know there are a lot of fun ideas here for white to try out. Knight to f3. So here we have the start of the Austrian attack. And here black has a couple different ways to play. E6 is not the main way of playing, and it does sort of limit black's options a little bit because he's not able to move the bishop out to g4. We also should decide here whether we want to castle kingside or queenside. But usually speaking, I think castling kingside is fine. So usually this bishop will go to d3, and then white can just castle and then maybe push this pawn to e5, grabbing some space there. Yeah, so our opponent has gone a6. So he wants to play the move pawn to b5, but I think we can go for this e5 pawn push. So this setup with the move pawn to e5 in the center, especially if our opponent takes it, is very favorable for us, because now he's opened up our bishop, which was once locked in by this pawn. If he didn't take it, then we would have had to find another way to reroute that bishop into the game, but since our opponent has captured it, it makes it a lot easier for us. So we should avoid trades here, just because we have more space than our opponent. And we also want to stop any counterplay in the center. So we know c5 is one of black's major pawn breaks in order to attack our pawn chain. And we also know that moves such as f6 are the other main ways for black to do so. So we keep an eye on these moves here. Okay, so I do want to play c4, but after the move c4, knight to b4 might be slightly annoying. I also have this move bishop to g5 in a lot of positions, which I should consider. But I feel like if I want to go bishop to g5, then I probably should throw in the move c4 first. Also c5 is coming as well at some point, so I need to watch out for that. I also have the move queen to e1, which is another idea in these positions. So you're going queen e1, bishop g5, and then queen to h4, and getting like this, I guess, very automatic attack on the king side. So part of me likes queen e1. And he probably should go c5. But I also want to play c4. So I'm not sure how I get all these moves in together. Maybe I play bishop g5 first. Force him to play f6 and then take. Yeah, we'll do that first. That way, if if he goes queen e8, later on he won't be able to play c5 because I always have knight d6, and the queen will be trapped. And if he plays f6 now, then you're always going to be stuck in that sort of unpleasant pin. Okay, so now I can play queen e1, but then h6 is coming. We want to limit all his counterplay if we possibly can. c5 is completely unplayable because of knight d6. So maybe queen d2. It stops not only knight b4, but it also stops h6. So yeah, let's just kill off all counterplay in this position. Yeah, now black has to find a way to get some play. Most likely he's going to have to play f5 or f4 or f6. Because if he allows c4 next move, then we stick a knight into the f6 square and then things get really, really bad. So yeah, he has to play this. I think we should take. So this way we open up the e file for our rook. We get some like pressure on this e6 pawn. We also have some weak squares here in the center we can play for. So his knights are sort of attacking each other at the moment. They want to go to the same square. So I could just move my knight to g3 and then chase this knight away with c4. I could also just play rook e1. Could also just take. I have a lot of moves here. I think I'll just take. Keep things simple. Bring the rook to e1. So put pressure on e6. Have bishop h6 coming. So if we trade off these dark squared bishops, then the e5 square becomes a permanent weakness. Also have this e5 square for our knight, if we want to hop the knight in there. It's a pretty good move. So the bishop wants to go to this square. So we can go bishop h6 here. What other options do we have? We can attack this pawn. Maybe play bishop f4 and put the bishop on the e5 square. Also looks pretty good. So I'm just going to keep things simple again. Just trade off these bishops and keep sort of a slight positional advantage. So I'm happy to take this one. I'm thinking we play knight to g5. Bishop to d5, maybe b3, c4. one way of playing. Is there anything else? Knight g5, bishop to d5. I mean, we can just attack the pawn. We can just play queen e3 and attack the pawn directly and try to win the pawn that way. Also threatening to bring the queen into e5 after that. Okay, again, I'll keep things simple. I'll just attack the pawn again. Maybe bring the queen into e5 if we need to. We also have some tactical ideas here. Like if bishop to d5, we also have rook takes e6 and rook to e1. I suppose he can just give up the queen and get 2 pieces for the queen. So it might not be that good. Okay, let's just go for the pawn on e6. So queen e5 is coming. Or knight takes e6. I don't think he'll be able to defend the pawn, and he definitely shouldn't allow me to play queen e5, I don't think. So his idea is that if I take here, bishop takes, queen takes, he's going to go queen takes d4. But after queen e5, it looks very difficult for him to move. Now the threat is some rook takes, and then knight takes h7 type of ideas. Even knight takes h7 straight away might be an idea as well. And I also have b3 and c4 as another idea. Okay, so I think I can just directly take the knight, rook takes here, king takes, I just take the rook, and that should be a pawn up. There's nothing better. I mean, the only thing is probably taking here, so we'll go for this. So we take here. Take here. Threatening this. Now the rook's going to come into the game as well. So I think this is almost checkmate. If the rook comes here. Oh, I can also play rook here. I sort of like rook e5 more. Yeah, I think it's fine. Do need to watch out for the d4 pawn, but at the moment it's fine. Yeah, and we're threatening rook h5 next. It's very, very hard to stop here for black. So I think the mistake there for black, a couple of things. Yeah, so whenever you can play e5 in the Austrian attack, it's usually a good structure for you. It's a little bit harder to bring the bishop into the game, or it takes a little bit longer if you don't take the pawn, because then I have to do like this type of maneuver where I reroute the bishop. But after takes, yeah, it becomes a lot easier. As white, you just want to get your attack going, so ideas with like queen e1, bishop to g5, and playing on these dark squares. You also want to keep an eye out for black's counterplay, which is always going to be mainly revolved around the move pawn to c5. So you want to really keep an eye on this pawn to c5 move in a lot of positions, and knight b4 is another idea. But once we stopped all that, we got a very pleasant position, just because we had these open lines to attack with, and black had a lot of weak squares and weak pawns which we could freely attack. So I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.